Hey Anshu, how are you?
Hey Neil, how's it going? Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. It's been a couple months since we last chatted, and we got some good feedback on our first AI discussion around language models and the science and academia. But there was also some people saying, "Hey, could you kind of tone it down a little bit so I understand what you're talking about?" So I thought we'd follow up with progression in the last few months and talk a little bit more at a higher level about some of these big players in the space and what's going on.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
So let's start with, I think we went deep on large language models last time. Let's start there. What is, who are the big players in the space right now? And what is it? What is the large language model?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the large language models are, what we started with ChatGPT, early last year, which sort of changed the game. And really, what it is a type of generative AI. So it generates language based on um, uh, the prompts that you're sending to it, and we call it like a large language model because you can sort of ask it any question and it will respond. The general form of the model is a deep learning architecture, and it really, like, the idea is you put in a word and it predicts the next word, and from there you generate paragraphs and essays and longer. And the basic architecture behind this wave of generative AI and large language models is what is known as the pre-trained transformer, which is kind of just an evolution of neural networks. In terms of the bigger players, obviously everyone knows OpenAI with ChatGPT. There are several other big players. So Meta has the Llama series of language models. Google obviously has the Gemini series. Anthropic, which is owned by Amazon, has the Claude series. And then there are a handful of others. There's Mistral, which is the European-based firm. They have a Mistral series and a Mixtral series. And then Elon Musk was one of the co-founders of OpenAI. They had a falling out. Now he's started X.AI, and they've got the Grok series. And there's way more. There's probably 50 to 100 production level LLMs out there. So what we've really seen in the last year, 6 months to a year, is just their mushrooming. And so a lot of players in the game. You're seeing a couple from China, like Alibaba, and some places like that, and a lot more open source models as well, like Hugging Face and things like that.
Cool. So let's tell me about the difference between them. So let's just focus on the top three or four and what's cool and unique about them.
Yeah, that's a great one. In terms of how they're unique, really, it's a lot about So I think the original model, like OpenAI, ChatGPT, that 3.5 model was a text-based model. So text was used to train it. Takes text input and produces text output. And separately, they had a separate line that was doing like image and perhaps getting to video, and that's a whole different sort of vertical that's probably going to start to combine at some point. And so a lot of the early models were kind of text based. Google was the first one that came out with Gemini, which was multimodal. So that meant on their side, they trained multimodally. So that's video, audio, images, and they were able to take that in as input and then output those formats as well. And then you saw some of the LLMs, big LLMs, try to mimic that functionality by not quite training with some of that, but on the back end, adding a layer, which would say process an image or audio to text that could then be put in the model, and then the model could output text. as time has progressed, almost all of the big models are providing multimodal support. So that's kind of a big change. And then I think, other than that, there are these standard evaluation metrics that are used across the LLMs to sort of make a statement on, hey, how is this performing compared to a human on common sense tasks, on language interpretation, on math problems, on coding. And so nothing, like almost, it's still to this point, things, depending on the standard, nothing's really over 90%. So those performance gains, like they're still just trying to really hit along those axes. And then other than that, it's like a lot of changes underneath the hood, that are, to do with the architecture. And that's the area that we are with this field where, nobody quite knows what's going to work or work better. And yet it takes, 6 months plus to train a model. So you'll see people making changes on, hey, will the number of the corpus size that's used to train the model make a difference? Will the number of parameters in the model make a difference? Will the context window, meaning how much text you keep in memory, make a difference? And all of those are being played with by these different players.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed a little bit of that in ChatGPT, which is the primary one that I use. But just this past week, I used another tool for image generation. It allowed you to upload 6 headshots. You could just take selfies, and it would create like a glamour shot for you, like a AI generated glamour shot of 100 different images, and you paid 25 or $30 for it, instead of going to a photographer to try to get a new business photo of yourself. You can now use that solution to put on a bunch of different outfits and give different facial expressions and haircuts. And it's pretty interesting. It's gotten much, much better than it was a year ago in terms of what it does, what it produces and gives back. So do you see a rapid progression in both the language side of the equation and the video and image side? I guess audio as well, you mentioned?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's definitely, like, I would say it for in a big way, these two things are moving in parallel. Like the big models on the image creation side, similar, same companies, but they're like different product lines. So for OpenAI, you've got DALL-E, Microsoft's got Image Creator, Google's got Image FX. There's obviously Midjourney. That's a really popular one, which is not in the LLM space, in the image creation space. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they merge. I think obviously the players that are kind of have operations going on both tracks, have an advantage, and they're probably feeding off of each other, able to sort of merge. But yeah, I mean, and I think the big one will be the text to video. That's the one where, it's like you can get 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds of a video, but not much more. And I think OpenAI they presented Sora a few months ago now, and that one kind of, looked like the best in class, but they haven't released it for people to really play with it.
Yeah, I've seen some things where you can type up, your script, and it will have a human-like visual just present your information as if it were you. And there's also kind of voiceovers that basically sound almost exactly like you. So it's pretty fascinating.
It's pretty cool. I mean, and the quality of what some of these have been able to produce are great. And so it's just, but a lot of it hasn't been commercialized yet. So, yeah.
So what do you think in terms of the impact to the workforce? Because that's what a lot of people keep talking about, is this is going to replace jobs. And I actually had a question about that in talking with a company about autonomous trucking. So they were saying, hey, do you think costs will come down to produce this type of technology in the future? And it's really a matter of the hardware and the people. So can AI actually improve feasibility for the people side of the equation? I mean, assuming that hardware costs will inevitably come down, can AI produce the same impact that a data scientist or a software engineer might, or do you see something evolving like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the story has always been workforce augmentation. And then as things advance and you see, oh, we could get to a humanoid robot, or something that is performing analytical tasks, like, could it really be workforce replacement? And, I mean, I think the like, the true answer is, nobody knows. But, from my perspective, in my 20 years in the field, it's always been that, labor markets shift, and there's just, as human beings, we always find new things to do. And so, I've been at a few different startups where we're always like, working in a really scrappy way. And so AI and data science and machine learning have always been used to help us scale, and that's always been the promise. And I think as things go forward, it's going to take a long time, first of all, before we get to anything that is workforce, replacement. But yeah, I mean, the pie grows, like, it's a growth mentality. The pie grows. So, hopefully this is workforce augmentation and things change.
What do you see? What else do you see evolving in the next few years with this? I see it. We talked a little bit about that last time, but it's moving so rapidly. I'm just wondering if you're seeing any changes in the last couple months on your opinions about where we're headed in the next couple of years with this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually, things are moving quite fast, and especially in terms of the development of the AI, but actually, from my perspective, not as fast as I expected on the, implementation and use cases. I know last time we talked about healthcare and, education and, automotive vehicles, like, use cases along those lines. So those, but, to date, we haven't seen anything that's really come out. Some of the fun things that we've seen are, some real-time AI language processing, like compiling reviews on different sites, looking for best flights, things like that. And so they're handy tools, but they aren't like game changers yet. So that's one thing that I kind of have been looking at the industry and thinking, right now people are still figuring out, people in your standard consumer facing or B2B companies are trying to figure out how to implement this technology in a way that's useful to end users or cost cutting. And so it's just taking it takes some time to figure out, hey, this is going to be, this is how we can employ it. One of the big things I've heard talked about lately is this concept of AI agents. So to your previous question about workforce replacement, an AI agent, you would try and build it out as a human, or not a human, I guess, but an agent with a specific task. So let's say you want to build a team of recruiting AI agents. You might build one to source resumes. You might build one to plan interviews. You might build one to send communications and so forth. So, you give these AI agents like tasks and autonomy in executing those tasks. So that could be interesting. And again, hopefully it's, workforce augmentation. So.
That's awesome. So let me close out with one that was very kind of similar to what you were just talking about. So when you think about domain experts, people inside organizations that are really good at specific things, You know, like my background is in product and technology. You have a strong data science background. So say you and I work together, what would we like, how would we create something that's valuable together using AI? So you're going to take it from the perspective of, hey, I've got a deep expertise in data science, and I'm going to try to leverage these models as much as I can. I'm going to take it from, well, I'm kind of a novice on the AI front. I still use the tools, but I don't have your expertise, but I do have expertise in product and technology and other ways, in developing business strategies around how to invest in the correct the correct bets to place in a company.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about like how you and I might work together in a scenario like that to best leverage AI, using kind of your background and experience to draw from on how you guys kind of go into an organization and apply what you do
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and that is a lot of what people are trying to figure out right now. I mean, I don't think you know, I think we still want to operate within the normal way we do business. Like, product works with data and tech to on strategy for any given company or product line. You work with data and technology to understand capabilities and how you can be enabled in getting to your strategies, right? So, and I think, of course, this is a case where it's like, okay, now you have an opportunity to not just do things better, but find better things to do. So that maybe that sort of changes how you focus on it. But I think you'd still be working with your teams in the exact same way. It's planning sessions and goal setting and planning sessions and setting, delivery goals and KPIs, like all that kind of stuff. I think that framework remains. Yeah, and then I mean, I think it's taking time to figure out how to best employ some of these new methods. And so yeah, the search, the search for the best way sort of continues.
That's awesome. And I loved what you said, instead of trying to just figure out how to do things better, try to find better things to do. That's a fascinating approach, and it's something that everybody should employ. So, any closing thoughts before we kind of let the audience hear what's up and what's coming, what's next, and what we might hear from Anshu in a couple months from now?
No, I actually think like this, the questions, that's the focus that I have as well. It's how are some of these models and tools that are coming out really going to change the downstream businesses? Like, how is this going to change our everyday life? And then what happens with workforce? Although I am a big believer that we'll continue to sort of use this as an augmentation, but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how businesses really employ the use of these models.
Well, thank you so much for your time again, Anshu. It's been great chatting with you, and if you don't mind, we'll catch up every quarter or so and see what's going on from your perspective.
That sounds great.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.